The beauty of the Orient, captured in all of its splendor by the pen and artistry of the world's foremost artists. Japan is an island nation, and naturally water plays an important role in her arts. As a source of inspiration, the sea is unparalleled. Japan's rivers and lakes, too, have provided subjects for the great masters of past and present. In this film, we will follow the course of the Japanese woodblock print as it developed in Japan during the 17th through 19th centuries. From the eye to the drawing board, the first step is to make a line drawing on a sheet of very thin Japanese handmade paper. This drawing must be precise, for it will guide the cutter's knife. As in every picture, mistakes are bound to be made. These can be easily rectified by simply pasting a small piece of paper over the mistake and making the correction on it. When the original drawing is finished, it is handed over to the cutter. Veteran cutters like this one are famous throughout the world for their skill and precision. Centuries of experience have taught the Japanese woodblock printer that the wood of the cherry tree which grow in the Izu Mountains is the best for woodblocks. Cherry wood is used because it has a fine and uniform grain and enables the cutter to transform the plain slab of wood into a fine and delicate relief block. Look at the fine grain of this block. It is good to use for the sea or sky blocks. The cutter now pastes the original drawing on the block upside down using rice paste. He then evens the surface of the paste on the block by hand. While the paste is still wet, he then peels off the fiber of the paper until the drawing itself can be clearly seen. He then cuts away the part of the sheet that has been corrected. The cutter prepares his tools before starting to work. His cutting tools are examples of the finest Japanese steel workmanship. The tools are razor sharp for precision workmanship. A natural clay stone with water is used to sharpen the tools. The art of cutting is the most important step of the process, for it requires many different kinds of tools. The job now is to clear the block of the wood which is not needed for printing. Watch the perfect precision of the knife blade, and how steady and how strong the cutter's hands must be. The knife moves in and out with amazing rapidity along the line of the drawing. Only a seasoned professional can perform so flawlessly. Now the cutter changes his cutting angle to take out additional space near the line. Where there are larger areas to be removed, the careful hands of the cutter use a chisel and a mallet. Strength here is less important than gentleness, for one mistap from the mallet and the block is useless. The cutter takes out the wood close to the lines by using pushing tools. The surface must be smoothed before the block is finished. This is a relief block. Register marks are important in a multicolored block because the corners of the paper must fall in exactly the same place on each block. If the register marks are faulty, the colors will not be synchronized. This block is the first one, called the line block or key block. Prints are taken from the line block for the next step, which is making color blocks. These prints or proofs are made using a hand press called beren. As many proofs are made as there will be colors in the final print. The artist indicates the colored portion of each proof in red. Red is the color which shows up well. The cutter then pastes each proof on a different block, which he will subsequently cut out in the same way he did the line block. To make one print, many color blocks are required. Since cherry wood is expensive and hard to obtain, both sides of each block are utilized. Color blocks usually require less sensitive work than the line block, so sometimes less experienced cutters help. This V-shaped tool is used for special effects. It was developed in the Meiji period. Each block has to have its register marks in the same position as the line block. Usually 15 to 20 blocks are needed for this kind of print. Pigment or powdered paints are generally used. When it is difficult to mix with water, it is mixed with the Japanese sake or possibly warm water. Many colors are used. The brush is made of the strong hair of a horse's tail. Before it can be used, the ends of the bristles are singed. Then it is rubbed against a shark skin to make the tips of the bristles soft. Many types of brushes are used, depending on the desired effect. The beren is a type of hand press, a Japanese invention of olden times and still in use today. When the cover of the beren is worn out, it must be replaced. Here we can see the inside of the beren. It is made of hand-twisted fiber of bamboo sheath, the covering of the bamboo shoot coiled inside a papier-mâché frame. The cover of the press is also made of the bamboo sheath. So the Beren is now ready for use. When printing, the first block to be printed is the line block. The paper to be used is dampened during the night. Next, the printer prints a block using rice paste mixed with colors. When the second impression doesn't fit neatly in its place, as indicated on the line block, the register marks must be corrected. Gradation printing, or shading, is one of the special techniques which were developed during the ukiyo-e period. Note how the brush itself is prepared for this shading by putting color on one side and then gradually fading the color out into plain water on the other. Printing is done in installments, the first block being used to print many sheets of paper before the second block is started. Other blocks with different colors will be done at different times. The printer can use one surface of the block with several different colors by using different brushes. A relatively simple print may require as many as 15 impressions. A complicated one, more than 50 impressions. Oftentimes, as many as 100. Now other colors are added. The finished product shows the exquisite color tones. With the same block, an entirely different effect can be obtained simply by using a different color. Note how using the same blocks, a morning scene becomes an evening scene. Even the paper used in Japanese printmaking is made by hand. Good paper is made of fiber taken from the inner bark of the kozo tree, or Japanese mulberry tree. And contrary to popular opinion, the paper is not made of rice. The paper is usually sized so that when it is moistened, which it must be before printing, it will not expand or otherwise lose its shape. The famous ukiyo-e prints of the Tokugawa era used this kind of paper and also followed the technique we have just outlined. During the height of the ukiyo-e printmaking in the Tokugawa era, or Edo period of Japanese history, the artist, cutter, and the printer were all different individuals. They worked as a team. Until the middle of the 18th century, they made only black and white prints. Then colors were added, first by painting them on the finished black and white print with a brush. Eventually, the invention of the register marks enabled the printer to make perfectly synchronized color impressions, as we have seen, and printing then became a precision art. They began to use many colors. These artist prints were popular in Europe as well as in Japan. In the early 20th century, the art of woodblock printing declined. Artists, cutters, and printers took new roles in the new industrialization of Japan. There are, however, still some artists who use traditional techniques today. Today, styles have changed, but the essence of printmaking is the same as it has been throughout Japanese printmaking history, still done by hand. The making of modern prints started around the end of the 19th century. Artists began to do their own cutting and their own printing, and as a result of their dynamic campaigning, the movement rose rapidly. Each artist experimented to develop his own individual technique. Now, plywood has taken the place of cherry wood, which comes in limited sizes and is expensive. The grain of the wood is often used for textural effects, as this person is doing. In Japan, there are many kinds of wood of beautiful grain. As you can see, modern prints are different from the traditional prints, but somehow they retain Japanese atmosphere. Perhaps this is the result of the ever-important hand, which is today, as it was in the past, the most important tool in woodblock printing. Many new techniques of printing have been developed too. For example, using different presses. In this example, the back side of the unsized sheet of paper shows a more interesting texture than does the front. So the artist has capitalized on this to obtain a special effect in his print. Large-sized plywood makes giant prints possible. Some plywood blocks measure up to 3 by 6 feet. Here, a large print is used to decorate sliding doors. The scroll in this tokonoma is a woodblock. Today, the technique of traditional printmaking is dying out. Only a few artisans are trying to preserve the precise method we saw at the beginning of this film. But the new movement in Japanese printmaking is flourishing. Now there are more artists making woodblock prints than in any period of Japanese history. Japanese artists still preserve the best of the old traditions, while at the same time they experiment with new techniques and new subjects.